In a turbulent world full of uncertainty, a term emerges that resonates powerfully in the global consciousness: the New World Order. What mysteries and hidden truths could this concept that has captured the attention of so many hold? Is it just a fleeting idea, or does it hold deeper and more transcendental secrets? The Bible, an ancient treasure of wisdom and revelation, may have the answers we seek. Could their ancient prophecies shed light on the true meaning and purpose of the New World Order? Are we witnessing the fulfillment of his warnings and visions about the destiny of humanity? Discover everything about the New World Order in this video, from its mysterious beginnings to its outcome. We will explore its history, political and economic connections, and different perspectives on its meaning. Join us on this fascinating journey as we explore the depths of history and spirituality, unraveling the enigmas of the New World Order and its impact on our modern world. Before continuing, support us by liking this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and don't forget to activate the notification bell so that YouTube notifies you every time we upload a new video. Let's start. Nowadays, it is common to hear the term global in various contexts, as it has become a regular part of our vocabulary. It is especially used when dealing with issues that transcend national borders, such as the economy, the environment, and public health. The recent pandemic has further reinforced its use, highlighting the interconnectedness and need for global collaboration to address common challenges. Now, a global vaccination registry is proposed to ensure fair distribution of vaccines and prepare for future emergencies, although it presents technical challenges. In addition, there is an increase in the control of information on social networks and a centralization of power in police and judicial spheres, generating debates about freedom and national sovereignty. A scenario is proposed where borders disappear and a central authority dominates human life with a unique religion and economic system. It questions whether this is possible and whether a new world order could be utopian or dystopian, challenging the balance between unity and diversity and freedom versus control. The concept of the New World Order is not new at all. Since ancient times, it has been proposed or considered as a different lifestyle alternative. However, we can accurately say that in recent years, especially after the pandemic, an urgency for a more evident world order has emerged. Let's take a look back to see how this topic was perceived a few years ago. In history until 1977, when the Voyager 1 and 2 space probes were launched. You may not know that a gold plate was placed on those probes that were supposed to be found by any intelligent life form. President Jimmy Carter wrote the message with these words: "This spacecraft, Voyager, was built by the United States of America, a community of 240 million human beings among the 4 billion that inhabit planet Earth." Although still divided into nation-states, we are rapidly becoming a single global civilization. We launch this message into the cosmos, a gift from a small, distant world. We hope to one day join a community of galactic civilizations. Jimmy Carter. Obviously, he believed in a new world order. Now let's move forward in time. President Bush speaks at a joint session of Congress that had been convened to address the Persian Gulf crisis and the federal budget deficit. In his speech, he repeatedly references the New World Order. 4 months later, the president gives another speech in which he also talks about the New World Order. 2 months later, he delivers another speech in Congress, commemorating the successful conclusion of the Persian Gulf War. Again, he refers to the New World Order and says, "Now we can see a new world order." Ladies and gentlemen, never in history has there been a greater champion of the New World Order than President Bush. Now, fast forward to November 2008, when Nobel Peace Prize winner, former Secretary of State and Assistant to the President for National Security Henry Kissinger, writes, "Now that the economic system's feet of clay have been exposed, this requires a new dialogue between the United States of America and the rest of the world." And he talks about his impression that US President Barack Obama is the best hope we have for achieving a new world order. The Pope, in his encyclical of July 2009, writes these words, "In the force of the uncontrollable growth of global interdependence, there is a strongly felt need, and even in the midst of a global recession, there is an urgent need for true global political authority. Furthermore, such authority must be universally recognized and must have the effective power to ensure security for all. The current Pope Francis has addressed the issue of the New World Order on several occasions. In his encyclical Fratelli Tutti, published in October 2020, he highlights the importance of fraternity and solidarity in building a more just and equitable world. While it does not explicitly refer to the term New World Order, its messages about the need for greater international collaboration and respect for human dignity can be interpreted in the context of discussions about global order. Even the president of Iran proposes a new world order based on global ideas. Between the 19th and the 23rd and the 26th of September 2023, the annual high-level general debate was held in New York with the participation of world leaders, under the motto, "Rebuild Trust and Reactivate Global Solidarity." The acceleration of actions within the 2030 Agenda and its Sustainable Development Goals was discussed, with the aim of achieving peace, prosperity, progress, and sustainability for all. During the event, heads of state and government, as well as ministers, discussed solutions to interrelated global challenges in order to move towards peace, security, and sustainable development. The New World Order is imposed on the UN with the beginning of the 70th UN General Assembly, held in New York. This period is marked by many eschatologists as the end of the world order. Now, in 2024, the United Nations will once again be at the center of international efforts to address the world's most pressing challenges. From strengthening the global economy to supporting climate action and keeping peace in conflict zones. We ask ourselves, what unites the minds of thinkers, scientists, presidents, politicians, and religious leaders regarding a new world order? An economist and best-selling author says, "I have said for many years that the term New World Order is simply code for global socialism with a ruling elite that governs the rest of us." Now, as many have observed, the New World Order is not new or ordered, it is very old. It stands on a foundation of chaos and confusion that is as old as history itself. Doing a biblical analysis, in chapter 11 of the book of Genesis, the first attempt to establish a new world order after the flood is recounted. The narrative describes humanity with a single language, which gave them a nomadic nature, moving from one place to another. Finally, according to the passage, they arrived at the land of Shinar, located in what is now Iraq, known for its great fertility and historical relevance. The biblical narrative indicates that they decided to settle there. If one reads the 11th chapter of Genesis, he discovers that the main idols in the hearts of the people were security and the search for meaning. Let's read Genesis chapter 11 verses 3 and 4. "And they said to one another, 'Come, let us make brick and bake it with fire.' And brick was used instead of stone, and asphalt instead of mortar. And they said, 'Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower, whose top will reach to heaven, and let us make a name for ourselves, in case we are scattered over the face of the whole earth.'" The security of controlling his circumstances and the importance of erecting a city and a tower that would enhance his reputation constituted an act of rebellion against God. This purpose of coming together in a new world order and literally building a tower that would reach the heavens is described as defiant of divine will. After the flood, God established the nations, but these people united to challenge his authority. He clearly resembled Satan's ambition, as described in Isaiah chapter 14, verses 13 and 14. "You who said in your heart, 'I will ascend to heaven, I will set up my throne on high above the stars of God, and I will sit on the mountain of the testimony on the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds, and I will be like the Most High.'" The men and women of this first post-flood civilization, in their initial attempt to build a new world order, challenged the limits that had been established for them. They intended for this project, beyond the greatest expectations of its founders, to succeed. However, the danger that this plan represented for future generations and the threat that this man-made order constituted were so significant that God decided to put an end to it from the very beginning. Eugene Peterson comments that God came down to look at the city and the tower that these people had built. Upon contemplating it, God reflected, one people, one language. Let's read verses 5 and 6 of the 11th chapter of Genesis. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower that the sons of men were building. And the Lord said, Behold, the people are one, and all these have one language, and they have begun the work, and nothing will make them desist now from what they have planned to do. This is how God dispersed them throughout the world, and they stopped building the city. That is why it was called Babel, because there God confused their language, and from there he dispersed them throughout the earth. David Breeze, a scholar of prophecy, comments, I think we must understand that political internationalism is not the will of God. He has ordained individual nations and not a conglomerate of nations. Now, when men attempt, by their own unregenerate power, to unite a conglomerate of nations and make it coherent without God, they are sowing the seeds of their own destruction in that conglomerate. This is precisely what will happen in the future world order that men are working on right now. In the first world order at Shinar, humanity builds a city and a tower to distance itself from God and assert its independence. However, the Bible culminates with the New Jerusalem descending from heaven to earth so that God can be with his people. What in ancient times seemed to be a new world order, all these issues that we are dealing with right now, can we overcome it? So now let me tell you about the modern attempt at a new world order. Our current attempt at a new world order is represented by the United Nations, whose headquarters are in New York City. What you may not know is that the United States funds that organization more than any other nation in the world. However, at the same time, they are subject to criticism from all the nations that are part of that same organization, which is peculiar. Now, the United Nations is an interesting example of the New World Order. For example, there is a property of around 4 hectares within the city of New York that in reality constitutes international territory, sovereign of the world. It is not owned by the city of New York, the state of New York, or the United States of America. He finds himself in limbo within New York City. The interesting thing, if you visit the United Nations building, is to see the number of biblical references there are there, although often misinterpreted. Anyway, for example, there is a mosaic called the Dove of Peace, a gift from the Vatican. There is also a statue called Let's Beat Swords into Plowshares, from Russia, which stands out among the works present. In every corner of the United Nations grounds, you can see works by artists that express the world's desire for peace. However, despite all its good intentions, the United Nations from its very inception has been an example of uncontrolled bureaucracy. They are plagued by fraud, endless debates, insults, international embezzlement, and strange behavior. This is a sad illustration of that reality. I do not consider myself a follower of the United Nations. I believe that they will never be able to achieve world peace, in the same way that the Tower of Babel could not establish a new global order. Now the question is, will the New World Order really be capable of resolving war conflicts and bringing lasting peace that transforms our world? What are the plans of the New World Order and in what direction are they taking the world? Will it lead to a world of abundant peace or will it lead to destruction? The Bible contains answers dating back to ancient times about future events, including the end of the human era and, of course, the end of world order. Now, the New World Order promises a peace that it cannot achieve. Did you know that? Despite efforts to promote peace, we remain at war almost continuously. Every peace treaty has been broken, including those signed with other nations and NATO. As world conditions worsen, the promise of peace emerges from a global dictator, known as the Antichrist. Let us examine some biblical passages that offer precise clarity on this topic, allowing us to understand it more thoroughly. First of all, in the book of Daniel chapter 2, we find extraordinary revelations through the statue of Nebuchadnezzar. While we won't cover the full meaning of the statue here, we invite you to explore this topic further on our YouTube channel, where we have a complete video that discusses this part of the Bible in detail. Let us turn our attention to verse 43 of chapter 2 of the prophet Daniel, where we find a key point that we wish to explore. Just as you saw iron mixed with clay, They will be mixed through human alliances, but they will not be united with each other, as iron does not mix with clay. This verse will help us clarify that what happened in Europe in recent years is completely true. The prophet Daniel predicted that they would be united through human alliances, political agreements, and diplomatic treaties, managing to unite different countries without abolishing the independence and sovereignty of the nations and autonomous states that compose them. This has become something practically impossible according to the most renowned political scientists in the world, but it is now a palpable reality. Now let's read verse 42 of chapter 2 of Daniel. And because the toes of the feet are partly iron and partly clay, the kingdom will be partly strong and partly fragile. Mud is composed of two opposite elements, water and earth, and the mixture with iron, an element foreign to these two components, clearly reflects that, both in the present and in the future, international politics and diplomacy, not only in Europe, will be saturated with international agreements between very different members to consolidate and then impose on the world the process called globalization. In the midst of this historical, social, cultural, religious, political, and economic context, a diplomatic leader of Jewish descent known as the Antichrist will soon emerge where he will hand over the dominion of the world under his authority. It is true that the agreements promoted by a new world order, particularly those supported by the United Nations, are shaping a global landscape that is trending towards a more unified international governance structure. These agreements and treaties seek to address global challenges such as climate change, food security, human rights, and world peace. However, the leader who will eventually consolidate this agreement will exercise world government, that is, the Antichrist. Can we say with certainty that human efforts and alliances are preparing the ground for the rule of the beast? We will address this in the next point. Secondly, let us read in Daniel chapter 9 verse 27. And for another week he will confirm the covenant with many. In the middle of the week he will cause the sacrifice and offering to cease. Then with the multitude of abominations will come the desolator, until the consummation comes, and what is determined will be poured out on the desolator. The confirmation of a covenant between the prince to come and Israel will mark the beginning of Daniel's 70th week, the last 7 years of this time after the rapture of the church. Regarding that event, the Bible teaches the following. The prince who will make the pact with Israel is the Antichrist. Let us also notice what the text says. He will confirm the covenant with many. It is evident that the Antichrist will negotiate a peace treaty between Israel and her enemies regarding a land dispute. This leads us to understand that the new world order that is sought to be established has characteristics that align with the figure of the Antichrist. Not only will he agree with this vision, but he will operate under its leadership for a period of 7 years, ostensibly working towards world peace. However, according to prophecy, this leader will break the pact after 3.5 years, triggering an unprecedented cataclysm in the world. Now, the world cries out for peace. Whether the Muslims wait for the Mahdi to bring it, the Jews wait for the Messiah, or whether the population in general longs for a leader who can provide it, the Antichrist will satisfy their longings. We have witnessed the impact that a leader can have in the transformation of a country, as in the case of President Nayib Bukele in El Salvador, who has managed to change a chaotic situation towards a safer one, being even considered the safest country in South America. This situation has led many people to desire a similar leader in their own nations. It is important to recognize that the Antichrist, according to biblical interpretation, will be a charismatic and strategic leader who will captivate people with his proposals and actions, presenting itself as a solution to the world's problems. I don't want you to misunderstand that Bukele is the Antichrist in any way. In third place, in Revelation chapter 6 verse 2 we also read, "And I looked and behold, a white horse, and he that sat on it had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he went out conquering and to conquer." A white horse, the animal represents a time of world peace without parallel in the history of humanity, a false peace that will be very brief. The one who is mounted is the Antichrist. The bow indicates that the rider is a warrior. The crown indicates that he is a ruler. The bow without the arrow could denote that it is a peaceful political conquest that is based on military power. It is more likely that the appearance of the first horseman occurs at the beginning of the 70th week of Daniel, which is also known as the Great Tribulation. Then he adds, "He came out victorious, and to win, this last satanic dictator will be more terrible than all previous dictators. He will rule over men as a false messiah, leading them into an organization that will rebel against God, just as Nimrod, his first predecessor, did. He is often called the first Antichrist." The idea of a satanic dictator over men dates back to Nimrod, the ruler over Babel, where it is said that he was a mighty hunter before Jehovah. This has the sense that he was a powerful hunter of men, and that he did it to offend the face of God. Dear listeners, today's political and social scenario is certainly ready for the emergence of such a political leader. All he is waiting for is that the Lord will allow it in his time, after he takes his church from this earth. In fourth place, in Revelation chapter 13 verses 1 and 2, we are told, "I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on its horns 10 diadems, and upon their heads a blasphemous name. And the beast that I saw was like a leopard, and its feet were like a bear's, and its mouth was like a lion's mouth. And the dragon gave him his power and his throne, and great authority. John the Apostle witnessed the meeting of 10 world leaders who, through modern democracy, will elect a common leader to guide them in the final moments of humanity. Let us read in the book of Revelation, in chapter 17, verses 12 and 13. "And the 10 horns that you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but for 1 hour they will receive authority as kings together with the beast. These have the same purpose, and they will hand over their power and authority to the beast." 10 rulers will emerge from a powerful entity and hand over their authority to the Antichrist. Without a doubt, as we have mentioned, everything is moving towards the fulfillment of biblical prophecy. The question that arises is, why is peace the instrument that the Antichrist will use to carry out his satanic plan? The Bible predicts that using peace as a tool of manipulation will be a strategy of the Antichrist. It will promise peace at a time when the world will desperately crave tranquility and be willing to sacrifice almost anything for it. That's when he will take the opportunity to take global control. This false sense of peace will manifest itself in the early stages, but will completely fade away in the middle of the Great Tribulation. Its arrival will be sudden, like the labor pains of a pregnant woman, and no one will be able to escape its consequences. The Antichrist will use this false promise of peace to lull nations to sleep while establishing his regime of terror and destruction. The search for a leader leads him to take advantage of the desperation and crisis of his people, leading them to a situation even worse than imagined. Today, people around the world long for a leader who can alleviate their suffering, improve their finances, and offer hope for their children's future. For many, what matters most is not the true nature or character of the leader, but whether he can keep his promises. Daniel chapter 7 and Revelation chapter 13 warn us about the arrival of a charismatic leader who will rise in the world. This leader will be physically attractive, gifted with eloquence, but he will also be extremely cruel and show spiritual inclinations, becoming a cult and worship leader. He will seize control of the world, attracting the masses and having people under the influence of him. Let's read the book of the prophet Daniel chapter 8 verse 25. "He will be a master of deception and will become arrogant. He will destroy many at once. He even will enter into battle with the Prince of Princes, but he will be broken, although not by human power." This false peace of the Antichrist clearly represents what men cannot do without Jesus Christ. In Isaiah chapter 57 verse 21 we read, "There is no peace for the wicked, says my God." The dilemma with the promise of establishing a new world order is that it offers something it cannot deliver. The reason? Because all the nations that make up this new world order are led by individuals with corrupt hearts. Although the Bible doesn't put it that way, someone a long time ago put it aptly: power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. The quest for power undermines the possibility of achieving world peace. Furthermore, a unity is idealized that is simply unattainable. We all long for harmony, but is it possible to achieve it when everyone seeks their own interests? In no way. Ultimately, the pursuit of a new world order is problematic because it promises a peace that it cannot deliver and aspires to a unity that is unattainable. Furthermore, it paves the way for a single world ruler and lays the foundation for a global economy. The concept of New World Order focuses mainly on the consolidation of power. It is about uniting all nations under one leadership, which would only be viable if that leader were Jesus Christ. Now, in the final phase of the New World Order with the Antichrist, the events described in the book of Revelation, chapter 13, verses 15 to 17, will be fulfilled. And he was allowed to breathe breath into the image of the beast, so that the image could speak and kill everyone who did not worship it. And he made everyone, small and great, rich and poor, free and slave. A mark was placed on their right hand or on their forehead, and that no one could buy or sell, except he who had the mark or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. It all began with the proposal of peace, security, and well-being for all, and the leader was entrusted with the authority to guide the world towards harmony. However, now this supposedly peaceful man reveals his macabre plan. His true objective is to be worshipped after having deceived even the inhabitants of the land and the Jews themselves who had accepted him as the Messiah. Finally, he reveals his true identity as a being of unprecedented calamity and destruction. It is evident that peace cannot come from the son of the devil. This will manifest in the last 3 years of the tribulation time. The Antichrist will take control of the world by force through various manipulation strategies. First of all, he will demand worship. He will issue a decree to kill all who refuse to worship the world ruler and his image. In other words, many who resist the Antichrist and remain faithful to Jesus Christ will pay with their lives. Let's read in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 verse 4, "Who opposes and exalts himself against everything that is called God or is an object of worship, so much so that he sits in the temple of God as God, showing himself to be God." He sits in the temple of God. In the middle of the tribulation period, the Antichrist will execrate the rebuilt Jewish temple in Jerusalem by placing himself there to be worshipped. Also known as the abomination of desolation, according to Matthew chapter 24 verse 15, this will be the climax of man's great sin in deifying himself in open defiance of God. In second place, sets a mark. The Antichrist will try to gain total economic control of the world. Everyone must worship him and receive a mark on the hand or forehead to buy or sell, which identifies the followers of the world religion promoted by the Antichrist. Those who refuse to mark themselves will be persecuted in order to be killed. It is undeniable that the Antichrist will use scientific advances to exert control over the entire world. In third place, the Antichrist will exercise absolute control over the world, creating a dictatorship that will possibly be the worst in history. He will seize political, social, religious power, and even the media. Furthermore, he will carry out an unprecedented massacre of those who oppose him, including the Jews who will eventually recognize his falsehood as the Messiah. Dear listeners, the path towards the New World Order leads us to the deepest perversion and apostasy unprecedented in all of human history. This path leads directly to serving Satan, and ultimately, towards the eternal damnation of the soul. The final outcome of the New World Order will unfold exactly as the Bible predicts. Let's read the book of the prophet Zephaniah, chapter 3, verse 8. Therefore wait for me, says the Lord, until the day that I arise to judge you. Because my determination is to gather the nations, to gather the kingdoms, to pour out my anger on them, all the heat of my wrath. By the fire of my zeal, the whole earth will be consumed. The Antichrist, in his deception and dictatorship, under the influence of demons, will dare to destroy the holy city of God, Jerusalem, and will gather all the armies of the earth to fight against Christ himself. Let's read Revelation chapter 19, verses 19 to 21. And I saw the beast, and the kings of the earth, and their armies, gathered together to make war against him that sat on the horse, and against his army. And the beast was taken, and with it the false prophet who had performed the signs before it, with which he had deceived those who had received the mark of the beast, and had worshipped its image. These two were thrown alive into a lake of fire burning with sulfur, and the rest were killed with the sword that came out of the mouth of him who sat on the horse, and all the birds were filled with their flesh. This image of the beast and its vast power is mentioned above in Revelation chapter 17, verses 13 and 14. These have one purpose, and they will give their power and their authority to the beast. They will fight against the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them, because he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and those who are with him are called and chosen and faithful. In these passages, it is described when the armies gather for the battle of that great day of the Almighty God in Armageddon. The beast and the false prophet are captured and thrown alive into a lake of fire, the final destiny of all non-Christians, believers. The Antichrist and the false prophet are the first to suffer torment in the lake of fire. The beast's other allies are defeated by the sword of Christ. All who die go to Hades, to which Jesus has the keys, until they are emptied and thrown into the lake of fire. The sad end of the New World Order is a result of its search for a path without God. However, the Lord will destroy them and establish his true kingdom of eternal peace. Glory to God for it. Dear listeners, the world is in a state of transition and change that suggests a growing preparation for a new world order. Technological advances, globalization, and global challenges such as climate change and the pandemic have generated a sense of interconnectedness and the need for greater collaboration between nations. In addition, there are political, economic, and social movements that seek to redefine power structures and international relations. All of this suggests that the world is at an inflection point where new forms of organization and governance are emerging at a global level. Everything ready and prepared, we as believers are waiting for the beloved of our souls, our Lord Jesus Christ, while the people without God to the New World Order and the Antichrist. Finally, let's trust in Jesus. He never fails or breaks his promises. He is the perfect ruler for a new world life. As we remain vigilant in our current culture, we must reflect on whether what is being promoted contributes to our nation and the world. Listening friend, without Jesus Christ, there is no lasting peace in any aspect of life. It begins with finding peace in your heart through Jesus Christ and extends to your family, church, nation, and the world. He is the Prince of Peace and the only peacemaker in the world. This is how we conclude this video. We hope it was useful, and we hope to see you in our next video. God bless you.